Good evening. Hello again. So I have a fun evening. We're going to be looking at a couple of really interesting things here. First, we're going to be looking at a natal chart, right? Look at the thing that we're all familiar with when we talk about horoscopes and signs and these things. But we're going to look at the actual chart itself and how we tie that to the tarot. How can we use the language of the tarot to better understand this system of astrology? Because they are, of course, both speaking the same story, right? Just from a different dialect, a different vocabulary. So if we know one, we can approach the other, right? And so that's one of the things we're going to be doing today, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. Another thing that we're going to be doing today is kind of a continuation of yesterday when we were talking about Lilith and this kind of darker side, right? The Qliphoth and this other kind of shell, this husk, this want to give, but the inability, right? And so we're going to look at that a little bit further. I'm going to talk about similar to the idea of becoming Lilith, of embodying her, and that whole process. We're going to look at these other entities that we talked about, and what are they, right? And how does that actually tie into this one truth, that ultimately we are the thing that is being embodied, right? And so that said, Luana, how you doing? Thanks for popping in. That's going to be a lot of fun as well. You know, it really comes down to this definition. You know, I was thinking about what to talk about today, and one of the things that I came up with here, and I grabbed Secret Teaching of All Ages, Manly P. Hall, and just opened it to a random spot, and I'll show you where it landed. And that's kind of what inspired that. Especially nowadays, that there's certain concepts that are becoming mainstream, but the source, I think, is a little dubious, and I think that we need to be careful when we look at these terms like black magic, white magic, shadow work, channeling. You know, these kinds of things are you know, seem to be a bit misunderstood, and when we are able to actually get past the pageantry and get past the lens of the zeitgeist and see the truth of it, it does give us access, and it gives us access to parts of ourselves that we can't see otherwise. It gives us access to knowledge that we didn't know we've always known. It gives us access to the memory of our future. And so it is a real thing. It's something that we all have the ability to manifest. It's just a matter of understanding the process and to not go through this kind of blindly by accepting definitions that really aren't appropriate. And so it comes down to that one truth and how we tie that all together, and we're going to talk about that as well. And then as part of our playing with our toys, I thought we would get into some heavier Gematria and, more importantly, some sigils, right? Like I've talked before about this idea of drawing your sigils, and we're going to discuss that today specifically. Grab a couple names, maybe grab a couple of sentences and bring them down to a word, you know, and some things. So we're going to play with Gematria, we're going to play with Notarikon, we're going to play with Temurah, we're going to get all the kinds of goodies with that. And there's a deck that I want to take a look at and see, does it pass the test? This is the Tarot of the Holy Light. It's a beautiful deck. I've had some very, very good readings with this deck. We'll see. Does it speak to the one truth? Does it tell the same story? Of course, if it's there, it'll be easily seen, right? And if we have to stretch, then we have to think about that, right? So we'll take a look at that one. That's a great deck for readings, but, you know, from the respect of the integrity of the art, like, it, you know, does it do the thing that we're here to do? That's the question, right? And so we'll be taking a look at that one. It's going to be a lot of fun as well. And then, of course, we're going to be talking to the Holy Guardian Angel, because, you know, obviously people are having trouble attaining conversation of their Holy Guardian Angel and, you know, the knowledge. And so I thought, you know what might help? You can borrow mine. So if anyone is having trouble attaining knowledge and conversation of their Holy Guardian Angel, just, you know, say something in the chat. You can talk to mine. We'll work it out. So that said, otherwise, We may kind of throw some readings around as well with respect to the subject that we're talking about at the moment, and if a question pops up, we'll kind of take it from there and see where that goes, right? You never know where that can go. Most of the time, when you allow it to be a random situation, is when some real truth pops out. Anybody who's been to the stream here can attest that when we get into like random stuff that comes up in the chat that we run some numerology on, and it just crazy stuff comes out of that. So that's always a lot of fun. And of course, it's during those times when we're playing that we have the opportunity to bump into all kinds of goodies, right? And then we can take that into our work on a deeper level, and that gives us the ability to maybe, I don't know, fill in some puzzle pieces. You know, when we're doing our work and we're heavily vested. Brianna, how's it going? Thanks for popping in. When we're heavily vested in the work, we're trying to find just the right sigil for just the right entity to do just the right job. And we want to get it right. And we're looking at all the different angles, and we're looking at all the math, and we're looking at all the different words, or whatever the case. Or even if we're just doing a reading for somebody, but it matters and we take it seriously. We go through this process of maybe overthinking, right? And so we step back into the outer order, right? And what the outer order is this place where we are allowed to play. It's the place where it's designed for that. And what's the purpose of the play is to give yourself permission to insult deity. Give yourself permission to not take yourself or the work too seriously, so that you can not feel encumbered, not feel hindered by the holiness. Pardon me. I've been feeling a bit under the weather, and it's starting to come on. But that said, you know, you need to feel that weight lifted so you can just dive in and look at every angle without feeling like that you're held back by some dogma, right? And so this play period is really important. And there's a couple of ways that we can go through this period. You know, both in some of the numerology issues and some of the issues with astrology and tarot, all these different kind of connections. And so I thought a good place to start would be, there's a spread that I do. I've developed it over the years. There's a few spreads that I do here on the channel that are unique, that I've developed personally over time. One that I've revealed a couple of times now is the story, right? The idea of the march of the courts, the rise of the proletary. And that said, this is a very special spread, because what it refers to is the well, nothing short of your creation, your existence from beginning to end into your next incarnation, and it just tells the whole story. And now, since we've already lived it, and we're not looking into the future, but we're recollecting the past, we can see that story in these cards, and because they're in the divine order, the story comes out. And underneath those three majors on the bottom there that are staggered are the deacons that are appropriate for that period of time. And so it tells a very interesting story, right? Well, there's another spread that I've developed that's related to astrology. And what it does is it uses the idea of the houses, right? In each house is basically a section of the sky. And we use it very similar to the idea of maybe like the Celtic cross that we're all familiar with, where the position of the card provides context. And so what we do is we use the position of the card with respect to the wheel, in this case a natal chart, or the wheel of the year, you know, and each sign is assigned a house. Now what we would essentially do is we would turn the wheel so that the one position would be the sign of your birth, and so the two position would be the sign after it, and so forth, going around the wheel until we find ourselves back at 12. And so what we would do is we would place the major arcana card that is relevant to that period of time. So for instance, the period of time that we're in right now is ruled by justice, right? We're in Libra. And so with that said, what we can do is that we would turn the wheel till Libra's in the one spot and then put down the appropriate major arcana related to that. Okay? And now what we would do is first read the chart relevant to that major associated with the planets of that period. So let me go ahead and grab a chart here and let's illustrate that visually. Let me put this here for now. I just have this as a reference here too, as something that's easy for me to see rather than looking at the screen. So, but so what we're going to do here is look at a chart. This is just a standard natal chart, right? And so just to be clear of what we're looking at here, we're looking at the idea of this direction being east, okay? And you're standing, this is the earth, and you're standing in the center looking east, okay? And at the moment of your birth, the sun was cresting at the beginning, at this spot right here, okay? And so as you looked out, you saw the sun rising, and it was hitting that spot at that moment, okay? And then at that moment is the moment of your birth. Now, what this chart refers to is at the time that you were born, the sun was not here unless you happen to have been born at exactly sunrise. Now, this person was actually born close to sunrise. And how do we know that? Well, if we look on the outer ring of this here, we'll see different symbols for the planets. And one of those planets is the sun. And we'll see that right here. Okay, that's the sun. And so that tells us where this person was born. Okay, and what their sign was. And it appears that this person was born in the sign of Sagittarius. Right? And so now we can tell a lot of other stuff from this, but essentially this would be the first house, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and the 12th house. Right? And so now what we would do is we would use our knowledge of that system to determine the context of each individual card in that area, right? And so for this particular individual, what we would wind up doing is we would wind up putting Sagittarius here first, right? And so Sagittarius would be in the first house, and then we would go to the wheel. This is a good reference, right? Certainly, memorization is best, but, you know, we're human beings. So essentially what you would do is you would start with Sagittarius facing that period of time so that we see that that's what you're entering, and then go around the wheel in the appropriate order. Right? And so what we would wind up getting then is Capricorn. Okay. Then we would get Aquarius, Pisces, and so forth. Aries, Venus, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra. Okay. So, and now there are various methods of determining what major, right? But if there's a couple of methods of going about that, and there's a list here that I've put together to make it easier for us here on the left-hand side, right? And so we can see essentially the cards that we're looking for are the signs. The signs are going to be found by looking at the area there that says the attribution on the top there, ATTR. You'll see some symbols. Starting at the top, we see the symbol for air, and then next to that we see Mercury. So we see the planet Mercury, then the moon, Venus, and then suddenly we see the sign for Aries, which is the Emperor. Okay, and so what we would do is we would go here to the chart, Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to find Aries on the chart. Right here. Okay. And just for the, in the beginning, it doesn't hurt to kind of write it down until you remember that Aries is Emperor, and you're always going to have to, be able to kind of go in your mind to Aries equals Emperor, but either way, just put in Emperor. Right, and then move on to the next one. Okay. And as you go through this process, it'll become more automatic. It's not something that you're going to have to constantly, remember. Or reference, rather. You'll be able to remember it. Taurus is going to be Hierophant. Okay. Gemini is Lovers. Okay. Oh, what did I miss on the 8th house after Gemini? Oh, this is Cancer. Yep. Why didn't anyone tell me? Cancer is the Chariot. This is going to be Leo. Leo is Strength. Right. This is going to be Virgo. Virgo is the Hermit. That's a good one. Hermit in the 10th house. That's going to be interesting to look at, right? Let's look at 11. 11 is going to be Libra. Obviously, Justice. Okay. And then we have Scorpio. Scorpio is Death. Let's just verify that. Yes. Okay, good. I forgot to look up. I just realized that I have a chart in front of me on the screen. Anyway, so yeah. And then we're back to Sagittarius. Okay. So, all right, and now so that this is the first essential layout. And so the idea here is that you would then lay the cards out in rows of 6 and 6, going starting at the 1 on the bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, representative of those cards, and then go through the top in this particular order, right? So starting at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then at the top, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, lying out the cards of the majors relevant to that period of time, okay? And now what you do at that point is that you have your chart in front of you with yourself, your client, whoever you're doing this for, whether it's for yourself or somebody else or whatever the case may be. And then you would go to your deck and you would pull these cards and lay them out and do that. Now, the second thing you would do is identify the associated specific symbolism within the chart itself, right? And so, for instance, we'll see here that we have Jupiter and Capricorn, right? We have, for instance, here, well, this is a little, we're going to get to nodes and things like that in a moment, then let's just stick with signs. So now here we have, it's Aries. Pardon me, I'm blind. Don't ever get old. The second thing that goes is your memory. I forget the first thing there. Oh, that's another. Yeah, that's a. That is a an asteroid. There you go, Gemini and Saturn. So Gemini and Saturn would be relevant to the lovers. Okay, and then we're going to look at that, right? So you get the idea of how the cards associate here. That's going to be another node. The moon in Leo. And, you know, that related to strength. Pluto in Libra. This is Uranus in Libra. Scorpio, or you have Mars and Venus in Scorpio. Wow. Any astrologers in the house know what that means, huh? That's interesting. And now here we're getting into the, we have Mercury, the Sun, and Neptune that are all in Sagittarius that are conjunct. We have with the ascendant, the rising. All right. So we have Sagittarius, Mercury, Sun, Neptune, and rising sign, all Sagittarius within 2 degrees of each other. That's ridiculous. All right. So this person is going to have an interesting conversation with me at some point, related to that. Right. And so anyway, that said, then this is a beautiful chart, but you'll see how we apply the tarot to that, right, and how we are able to using this idea of the context of the positions tells us a lot, right? And so, the first thing, like, without even pulling cards, like, again, I have not touched the tarot card yet. I'm going to utilize the language of tarot and the language of astrology to apply it to this person's natal chart just out of the gate, right? So before we grab cards, we'll do it. I have a deck ready and we'll do that. But so here's the idea. The first thing we're going to do is start in the 1 position. And so let's take a look at our context. And in the 1 position, we have the self or the identity, and that is Sagittarius. In that case, Sagittarius is going to be the major of art or temperance. Art or temperance, right? And so we're going to just write that in here. Okay, so temperance. Or art. Art is the name in the Crowley system, the Thoth system. Right? Let me just delineate that a little bit better for the camera. These lines are not so clear. Okay, is that better? Yeah, okay, that's a little clear. So we're here in the 1 position, and that 1 position is going to tell us, when we look at the reading here. Stick the desk somewhere. Sorry. I think that might work. Yep. Okay. Perfect. All right, so then in the 1 position here, okay, we're going to be reading the temperance as far as self and identity. So this individual, their identity is the temperance, is the idea of temperance, right? And so what is that telling us? I've talked about temperance before. It's the idea of the cups being kept together. It's the idea of sort of balancing the 2 desires to receive, the things that you receive. One of them we receive openly, and one of them we receive through discernment, right? And we have to balance that. So it's not the idea of not doing. It's not the idea of doing without. It's not the idea of abstinence. It's the idea of respect for the self and respect for the thing you are experiencing. Experience it to its fullest. Like, don't miss a drop. Don't miss a moment. Don't miss an iota of that experience. If the idea is to do a thing, do 100% of that thing in 100% of the ways that it can be done. So it's not about not doing, but it's about the why, because the why is what determines our behavior. The why determines the lens we use when we view the work. And so the lesson, and more importantly, the quality that this person has access to, because it's core of their identity, is the idea of temperance, meaning that it's going to be easy for them to balance that. And at times they may feel like that there's a weakness because, you know, when you're spilling cups back and forth, occasionally some stuff's going to fall out, and that's okay. Once we understand the truth, we have access to fill that cup right back up with whatever we need. Right? That's the beauty of the magic of the system, right? But that idea carries on. And so it comes down to by using your heart first, and then applying discernment to that through the mind after, and allowing that to be those two hearts, your identity and your truth, can be in unison. And when they are, and then they're looked at through divine mind, through your actual self, before the ego, before the nonsense, truth, right? And what you're able to do is to make the appropriate decision of knowing when to say when, knowing, is that the person I should let into my heart or not? You know, is this really good for me or not? And if it isn't, when do I stop so that I don't injure myself or somebody else, or, you know, suffer? When the goal is pleasure, suffering is failure, right? And why are we here? To receive pleasure. That's why we exist. So the idea of this one is that this person is going to find that as their karmic lesson. But because of that, they will find skills, techniques, mechanisms by which they become masterful at that. Or at least they have the opportunity to do that. Now, how does that tie in with what we know about Sagittarius? Because Sagittarius is this kind of interesting idea of the combination of right brain, artistic desire to express, but interestingly, it's through the act of communicating. The Sagittarius wants to be heard, and so a lot of that has to do with sort of this personality that's developed during connections with other people in order to facilitate that communication. So oftentimes that can be either a gregarious personality or a very, like, an overconfidence, or some type of sort of an interesting quality, right? A quirk that makes you stand out, you know, that thing that you have. And so, and I'm going to stop there, but you get the idea, right? And then we'll go through that the houses with each individual card, and you know, and develop that story, right? And so as we go through the houses, there's some learning that takes place, and then there's a second level. Once we've gone through the physical manifestation stuff and possessions, you know, then we go through the stuff of, like, the sword, like the communication stuff, you know, and then we're going to move into so on and all these different things. Once that's done, you can call it finished, and the reading can be done. And there's no shame in that, right? You can now say that you've really learned a lot about that individual, and we can go through the process of doing the same thing, but turning the wheel related to where we are right now today. Place the majors in that appropriate order, and then read them against each other, right? Again, it's very good to have two decks to do that. Have a black and white deck and a colored one. The colored one will be the outside wheel of your current circumstance, and the inside wheel of your birth would be the black and white, right? And a third very interesting way is to take it as it stands for your birth, and now break out each one of these majors into the appropriate decan. And so if we look at the period of time that this person was born in Sagittarius, let's just take a look at the wheel here. We're going to jump to Sagittarius. Okay, and you'll notice that there's 3 decans that are relevant to that period of time. Okay, and that's going to be the 8, 9, and 10 of Wand. Okay, and so what you can essentially then do is to go to their chart, and you would put the 8 through 10 of Wand. Okay, and now so you've got some learning here. We know that we're talking about temperance or art, and what the idea is of that with respect to the tree, with respect to the idea, you know, the Kabbalistic. We also understand what that means with respect to the symbolism of a reading. We also know Sagittarius for this house. We understand the 3 decans. This is powerful stuff right here. When you tell the little mini story of these 3 cards in succession, and you apply it to the idea of the 1 position, which in this particular circumstance, the 1 position is the self and identity, then you really get a lot of good stuff, right? And there's so much that can come from this process. And look, I haven't touched any cards yet. Very good process. And so that's a way to just take a natal chart and to apply this. And again, all you could do is to run a chart for the current moment, the transit period. Where are we right now, this moment, and overlay it with the same process. So just put down the major relevant to the sign that we're in right now. So right now we'd be in Libra at East, where this is Sagittarius at East. And so if you did those two charts, you could sort of visualize it this way, right? We would find Libra out East, and this is Sagittarius. And so if you were to sort of put these together and visualize that, that overlay, essentially what you would be looking at is Libra on Sagittarius, Scorpio on Capricorn, and so forth, and then read those connections. Now, what does Capricorn mean, right? Capricorn means the devil, or Aquarius means the star, and so forth, Pisces, and all these things, right? And so as we go through these, we just apply the appropriate major, read that. If you want to get more granular, and if you feel like there's more that needs to be learned, then you seek the advice of the deacon. And then you pull out those 3 cards that are relevant to that. And how do we find that? We just find it here on the chart. The deacons for Libra are the 2, 3, and 4 of sword. Okay, like right now we're in the period of the 3 of sword, which ends on October 12th. It also represents Saturn in Libra. It's the period of time where Saturn is the predominant energy of the deacon's personality. The lesson that deacon teaches is Saturn in Libra. Okay. But so you get the idea. And if anyone wants to learn more about this process, then certainly feel free to reach out. I'm happy to teach the process and to provide some tools to help you along. And if anyone is interested into the actual spread itself, it's one that I love to do. You'll learn a lot, and obviously as part of the process, we wind up developing a really nice astrological profile, right? Because the idea here is to find all of the different connections. So we find all the planets, we find the signs, we find those connections, we find the conjuncts, we find all that stuff. And so, once all those connections are put together and we have a good snapshot, we apply this idea. And so now what we have is a completed wheel for your birth, which includes the influences of the majors, the influences of the deacons, which is a much larger version of this, right? Because this right here tells the whole story in fewer cards, but it's a more serious working. This is a bit different because the goal of this spread is different. This spread is telling us about the world that we live in right now, the world of the body. The spread is trying to speak from your soul to your soul, right? It's seeing yourself through the eyes of the world and then hearing the voice tell that story, right? That's what this is. Now this tells you how to navigate the circumstance that you currently find yourself in for this current incarnation, right? And so that's the value there. So yeah, that said, that is a very, very powerful technique for applying the idea of astrology, or specifically a natal chart, which nowadays you can get a natal chart all over the place. I use a piece of professional software, but you don't have to. All right, I mean, I'm sure there's resources online where you can simply put in the birthday, the time, the place, and you'll get a good chart. I didn't put all the symbolism here. I just put the planets and signs and left it at that. There's, this chart can be jam-packed with information, but I find let's start simple, get the majors in, to look at the deacons, look at the connections. For instance, this person has this beautiful conjunction here of Mercury, the Sun, Neptune, and their rising sign all in Sagittarius, within 2 degrees of each other. That's just beautiful. There's a lot of kind of pretty stuff here. We have another conjunction here of Mars and Venus are conjunct in the 11th house in this particular circumstance. So let's look at the 11th house, and we have, just to be clear, Mars and Venus are conjunct in the 11th house. And so there's a very, and that's in Scorpio, by the way. We're talking about Scorpio. So, hello, Steph. Thanks for popping in. It's been a while since I've seen you in the chat. And so you get the idea here of how this could be used to gain some insight into the chart. Once you've done the astrology work of actually looking at a natal chart, you can then,
write down, or if you have software, type over what the cards are, what the deacons are, and get some really good information in respect to that. So, but we have some interesting stuff here. They're very close together, a couple degrees apart, 5 degrees it looks like. And this is Mars and Venus in Scorpio together. So in the 11th house, which is referring to connections. And if we consider the idea of this individual with respect to their relationships, jump over to number 7. In number 7, they are the lovers. And then here in number 11, we have Mars and Venus conjunct in Scorpio. And so what we look at here is there's a potential lesson for the idea of temptation, and understanding that temptation is both bitter and sweet because it's necessary. It is the mechanism for the fall, for the beginning of the process. It's the catalyst. But it also can potentially be misunderstood, and the wrong target become the focus of the target of desire, and that's when you have a problem, right? When Lilith spoke to you, that was all because the desire was to descend, to become physically manifest. It's different when it's some kind of base bodily desire that really is just there to inadvertently do the work of another entity, right? That we get fooled into thinking that we are, which we aren't. And we got to be cautious about that. Like who's talking? And as long as we have the ability to kind of look with the right eye and see who's actually talking, we're protected from that. That's why we cast the circle. That's why we change the name, right? And all that kind of neat stuff. Because ultimately what we're trying to do here is to just access the truth. And once we do, then we have the ability to play for the first time as ourselves, right? Let's take a look here. So let me just pause real quick and ask, does anybody have any questions about anything I talked about? Or, I kind of like to dip the toe in the information, and with the intent, hopefully, of people who are interested to explore further on their own, and then pop back in. And so as we cover it over the days, months, years, we'll put puzzle pieces in place for people. But does anyone have any questions about anything I covered related to the natal wheel, related to the tarot, and how we apply that? And interestingly, how we did that whole thing without pulling any cards. We just used the language of the tarot, which is perfect because it comes from divine order. It's in the divine order, so it works. We're able to read that whole circumstance without, even touching any cards. That's why we do our times tables, right? That's why we memorize at least the majors, and then we can maybe apply some algorithms to get to that other information there. Like, what's the suit related to the deacons for that period, and can we potentially see a pattern in that? There's a distinct possibility that there's a distinct possibility that we'll see a pattern begin to emerge as far as the element of the period of time and the deacons that are relevant to that period. And if we understand that it's really just going 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then back to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, in the reverse order, fire, water, air, earth, clockwise, with the number starting at 2, going counterclockwise, then you can very easily draw that in your head. You know that the 2 of Wand, which is fire, starts off and just start going. Counterclockwise with the numbers, clockwise with the elements, and there you go, in groups of 3. And so you could easily draw this if you needed to in a crunch. Now, obviously, it's better to just have the chart in front of you, or not do this work if you don't have the chart and use a different method. But it is a way for you to just understand the pattern. Start with the 2, right? 2, 3, 4 is going to be Wand. And now what's the next element? Where we're going to be going backwards, right? So if it's Wand, Cup, Sword, Pentacle, and then Wand, so then we're going to go backward. We're going to go to Pentacle. So it's going to be 5, 6, 7 of Pentacle. So let's just make sure we did our math right. Okay. And you'll see we have 5, 6, 7 of pentacle, right? And then so then 7, 8, 9 of sword, or 8, 9, 10 of sword. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? And so that pattern could easily be memorized just by knowing that one fact of the vortex, right? What is the vortex? The fact that the numbers go counterclockwise and the order of the elements goes clockwise. That's it. And so we can memorize that process, right? We don't need to memorize it. We apply the algorithm at the moment. I don't need to memorize it. I just know that Aries starts with 2, 3, 4 of wand, and I'm good to go. 2, 3, 4 of wand. What's the one after that going backwards is going to be the cup, right? And so then we're getting into, and so on. Or if we're going the opposite direction, that's it. And just remember, the numbers go counterclockwise, as they would normally. So that's fine, right? Isn't that good stuff? Let's take a look at the chat here. Oh, Brianna, how's it going? Thank you for popping in. It is really important. Could you please tell me? Do you see any changes in my life happen anytime soon? Well, the second question is interesting. We're going to talk about that in a second. But yeah, of course, we can take a look at some stuff. The next portion that we're going to be looking at actually is related to Gematria. We're going to be making some sigils. We're going to be making some things related to speaking to entities. So before we do that, let's talk to Brianna's question. How's the audio, by the way? Because again, I had to refresh some stuff, and it seems like I'm having some issues since an update. Windows updated, and suddenly I'm lagging all over the place, and my mic wasn't working yesterday. So, if the audio is good, let me know. If the music's too loud, or the mic's too loud, or everything is good, just let me know. Let me just move this. Then we'll get back to this in a moment when we see what we can see here. I'll use the thoth for this. The small thoth. I have the large one up here, but we're going to read with the small one. Isn't that pretty? It's a nice surface. I think it's better than the desk, and I like the kind of the columns with that space in the middle and stuff. It's really good. It does. Okay, thank you, Luana. I appreciate that. Okay, so. Brianna, let's take a look here. Let's start with the top here. Hi, how's it going? Hopefully everything's going good. Yes. Really important. Could you please tell me if you see any changes in my life happening anytime soon? I guarantee change. Oh my gosh, the change is coming. But all kidding aside, yeah, that's the state we live in, is the state of change, right? We were constantly in a state of change. And change what? Change into what? What's changing? Everything. Nothing. Okay. There it is. Start there. Okay, Brianna, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you to release yourself of the expectation of what it is that you want to hear, the actual question, okay? And rather what we're going to do is we're going to look at what it is you need to know, which is probably what you're asking, because, we've talked, and so, we both know that we know what's going on here, and so let's take a look. Just want to grab 2 more cards.
So, okay. 2 9s and a Hierophant. Wow. What we have here is these competing wills. The very, very strong, loud, powerful masculine that's in control. And then we have this idea of this kind of waning feminine energy. But there's another side of it also. It's not just that that masculine energy has control or power. It's also that they there's like a nourishing factor, meaning like they're the provider in some fashion. And if that weren't the case, things would be bad. And so there's an idea of there needing to be kind of a psychological control in that respect. The Hierophant we're looking at refers to the institution, the law, the government, the wheel of time, but from the respect of the part that we can't control, but we can understand and participate in, but it's rigid and has an agenda, right? And then we have the Nine of Swords, which is the same idea of the wand there, but on a different level. This is of you individually constantly running different ideas, different possibilities, and they're all negative, and they're painful, and they're not serving you at all. They're actually holding you back from being able to kind of know the truth, because when we ask questions, we get answers, which lead to questions, and questions and answers are the same thing. They seem like opposites, which they kind of are, but they're not. They're really two sides of the same coin. They're one thing. Questions and answers. That's not truth. The opposite of questions and answers is truth, right? And that's what we're looking for. And once you have that, the questions go away. These ideas disappear. You don't need them anymore because there's the one truth. There's the one answer. Now, what we're looking at here is the idea of Mars in Gemini. Gemini is the card related to the Lovers. So the Lovers is the idea of temptation and the fall, a decision that's made without the regard for the outcome, and that decision leading to an unchangeable circumstance, right? There's no getting back into Eden. And so it's the idea of letting go of the desire, because the fact is it can't be met. And so rather, it's about looking forward into this new experience, and trying to be everything it can be, regardless of what you thought you wanted, because that's gone now, right? That's the idea of the Lovers from the more esoteric level, the why of the fall, right? But what happens is when you recognize that why, these swords disappear. The other energy here is the energy of Mars, and that is this energy of directed anger. It's kind of the idea of using that as a means to facilitate that, the fall, I mean. It's indicative of the Tower, right? And the Tower is the card of very similar destruction. It's the idea of what happens after the Lovers, where they have come to the conclusion that this is going to take place. The decision's been made. It was a bad decision. The outcome of that is the expulsion, the descent, suffering, essentially. And then we have this opportunity to give in to that and to use it as an opportunity to redeem. So that's all the story. That's the truth and secret. And what that really means is we have to empty the cup so that it can be filled with the right thing. Because right now your cup is being filled with all these ideas. And each one of those ideas is just a different toxic, poisonous thought that isn't the truth. This is a young girl. She's in a state of wanting to be heard. It's the idea of crying out to heaven and saying, "Are you there?" It's the idea of having a very deep compulsion in your heart to make real what's in your mind, like to speak your mind at all costs. But also the question is the motivation for that, which is why I drew the devil. Because what the devil refers to is the idea of sort of giving in to the lower thoughts. Like, this is a person who out of a mechanism for coping is in a position of giving in to their lower self, of like not seeking, being satisfied with the answer on the outside, but that's not sustainable. And so you wind up in this energy of it becoming the single compulsion is to be heard, like a finally be heard kind of thing, like I've been quiet long enough. And that allows this person to speak to power. Meaning that this person in the middle, this Hierophant, is the idea of the thing that she is finally going to walk away from. Okay? And so now this allows her, due to that compulsion, to speak to power, to essentially speak to the people that are part of that institution, that are the ones that are feeding these ideas, that are the source of this anxiety. And so let's then ask the question, of what should you do next? What is your next action? What should you do next? So here's the idea. The sense that I'm getting is that this idea of crying out to power has not worked. It's like falling on deaf ears. And so what this is referring to, the Hermit, is the idea of going into the darkness, because when we're there, we're forced to use something other than our eyes, right? And you know, when you're seeking truth instead of answers, the only place that you can find it is in the dark, essentially. You can't use your mind. You can't see with your eyes. You can't hear with your ears, because those are the devices of the ego. It speaks to us through those things, and tricks us into thinking that we're the observer of that whole thing, and that's the problem here. So the work of the Hermit refers to the fact that you go to a place. We can talk about that at some point. I've mentioned it on the stream a couple times, different techniques, but the idea here is to go to a place where the real you is able to exist, even just for a moment. And during that moment, since you can't see with anything in the darkness that you normally can, as a side effect, as a necessity, your inner light begins to shine. It's the idea of when we walk through the light, it shows us everything. And so we begin to not rely upon our inner light so much, because it gets drowned out anyway, right? And so we almost forget that it's there, and we stop using it. And so even in darkness, at first, it doesn't ignite. But if you go through the process correctly, if the work is stated, and you understand why you're doing it, to communicate with somebody, to communicate with yourself, to speak to a certain individual or an entity, whatever the reason for the work is, that can activate, that can actually turn on, that light turns on. And but it has to be done alone, and it has to be done willfully with the correct intent. And how to go about that, we can discuss. And actually, some of it we're going to talk about tonight. And so, if you're not able to stick around, then watch the video. My stream is inevitably going to go down because of my internet at some point this evening, right? But that said, I will be leaving the streams up, and if it does go down, I'll just put it up as parts, so you can go back and listen to it again. Listen to the reading again if you'd like as well. But the idea here is that there's a reason that you seem to have these questions and that they're not being answered. And that's because you're being drawn toward truth instead, and truth speaks from a different place. And so if you're not listening for it, you'll miss it. And we'll just walk around in a constant state of want. And it seems like that there's a different way to find the answer to what this is you're looking for, and it's going to be a little bit maybe different than you're thinking, right? And so we can explore that a little bit more privately. All right, so just reach out, and but remember that this reading is up, okay? And then we can look at this reading and go back to it. So, let's just get this shuffled up for later. So there's a new kind of numerology I'm going to talk about tonight, which I kind of touched on a couple of days ago when I spoke about the Masonic cipher and how it's utilized for code. But what we're going to talk about tonight is how to use that same cipher to use as a tool for Temurah, for permutation. And so we're going to take somebody's names, plural, a bunch of people, and we're going to draw sigils of their names. We're going to do the Temurah to change it based on various methods, including the 9 chambers, the Kabbalah of the 9 chambers, which is what I'm going to be talking about tonight. And what that does is it gives us the ability to change the name in a different method than the normal method of Temurah that we're familiar with. So it's just a fun way, and you can also code it. Whoops, one more time. There we go. And give it to somebody in code that somebody else would not be able to read. So it's a really fun way to kind of go through this process where you can actually give somebody. This is the goal. You have the process, you have the ability to give somebody instructions for drawing a sigil in secret. And so you could literally give somebody a piece of paper with direct instructions on how to draw a sigil, and then they could take this information, which somebody else would just see as gobbledygook, very easily decode it, know what the letters are, draw the sigil, and the two of you will have the same symbol across time and space, right? You could get a letter from 100 years ago and draw the same sigil based on this method that we're going to talk about tonight. So it's a lot of fun. Okay, that looks like it's a good place to stop. Let's just leave that right there. Okay. So, let me just review my notes. I'm a fraud. I have no notes. What did I write down? Like 3 words? Yeah. Foxing, Pound X, 9 chambers. That's what I wrote down. Okay, so, let's see. Let's bring this back out. This is where I was planning on going next, since we're going to be speaking to some demons. Oh, yeah. Well, if we talked to their mother yesterday, then we should talk to the children today, right? I mean, 100 of them die every day. We might as well speak to them, as many as we can before they get drowned. All kidding aside, though, do yourself and everybody a favor, and do not take any of this too seriously until we get into the inner order. Then you take it seriously. But for right now, it's all fun. So, I need to heat up my coffee, right? And then I'm going to be back in just a minute or two here to continue. And what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be talking about 2 very interesting subjects. We're going to be speaking about, first of all, the Kabbalah of the 9 chambers, which is a new form, at least as far as what I've shown on the channel here, a form of Temurah. It's a method of permutation, and so we're going to look at that as well. And now I have here, I believe this is the stuff I put together yesterday. Oh yeah, for Adam, Eve, and Lilith, and then put them together, 542. You know, I thought maybe we should apply the idea of the 9 chambers to that and see if we get a different circumstance than when we did the normal Temurah. The 9 chambers is a much, let's just say, holier method. I think you can all see the beauty of the pattern here. And that's going to be a lot of fun. So, and now we're going to do that with people's names. We're going to do that with all kinds of stuff. And then the second thing that we're going to do is apply that to sigils and then draw them on the rose. And by drawing it on the rose, we can kind of look at what these will look like as a linear actual physical thing in the world, right? You know, it's a concept in our minds until it's actually brought into the world with a pen. Even here, it's an arrangement of 1s and 0s on the screen, so it's kind of real, but it's kind of not. But when we draw it on a piece of paper, or we paint it, or we bring it into physical manifestation, the word spoken that it represents is actually spoken into reality. And there's a very important lesson in that. And so we're going to do that tonight. We're going to look at taking somebody's name like Brianna, or maybe Steph, right? Or maybe Loanna, or maybe all of them, Michael. And then we're going to do the Temurah based on the Kabbalah of the 9 chambers. And what will happen is we're going to get all the kinds of fun new words. And then see what we get, right? That said, then, I just need a couple minutes to heat up a coffee here. It's going to be, I will be back at the speed of Keurig. Okay? And if the stream happens to go down while I'm gone, I'll have no idea. And so I'll be speaking to myself for probably 20 minutes before I realize, Emma, how's it going? Today I watched, okay, hang on, this is going to be good. Today I watched 2 ministers live stream about exorcisms. I didn't know people still did that stuff. The people they exorcise are already some kind of victimized people. Exorcism is, that's a dangerous subject. You know what? We'll speak about that one day on the channel here. Not today, but what I will say is that there's a lot of people out there suffering at the hands of these people that are claiming to exorcise demons. And you spend a couple of minutes on my channel, and you're gonna, we spoke about demons. We still spoke about angels. We're gonna be calling demons tonight. That's right, Emma. real ones. Real demons. The speed of Keurig. Yeah, so how quickly can a Keurig brew a cup of coffee? Depends if I have it on and the water's hot or if I have to wait for it to heat up. That said, I'll be right back. Yummy. Alrighty. Appreciate that. Creepy? Oh yeah. Oh, it has only begun. Because, what's the point of having the toys if we don't play with them, right? And again, I want to be clear that when we're in the outer order, we tell our lies openly, for free. And so the idea here is to play with the toys, to have the experience without regard. It's permission to insult deity. It's permission to look at it from every perspective. It's permission to dress as crazy as you can. It's permission to cast circles and call demons and angels, and to be a powerful mage on the top of a tower, because it's who you are. But then we walk into the inner order and we take it seriously, and that's where we actually take the learning from that mythological experience of reenacting our creation through symbol, and we apply the knowledge, the algorithm, the vortex. And what we learn in that process is how to craft the key to the inner sanctum. And what's in the inner sanctum? The truth. That's where I work. I work in the inner order. The truth in secret. It is the truth, but it's in secret. It takes a little decoding, right? And so that's this place that we're trying to reach. This is where we're trying to reach. The truth told openly, where there are no questions. And answers don't matter, because there's only one answer that matters, and that is the truth. And that's what we're here to find. So while we're in the outer order, we're going to have some fun, and it's going to get creepy. We're going to be drawing magical circles. We're going to be drawing sigils of the names of angels and demons. And when don't forget what I said, and it's true. When you bring something into physical manifestation, it's real. And the intelligence that's put into it is the intelligence it has. What is that intelligence? It's a small piece of you. Who is Lilith? Who was in the chat last night and became Lilith with me? That was fun, wasn't it? If you didn't have that experience, go back to last night's stream and go through the experience of becoming Lilith. It's powerful. Because what we're going to talk to tonight are some of the ones that know her. And that's going to be fun. So let's begin with a portion of The Secret Teachings of All Ages. This is by Manly P. Hall. And this is a great book that has a lot of really good information that I wound up getting my hands on years ago. I lost my copy. This is a newer version of that. And this is what I opened to today when trying to figure out what to speak about tonight. Other than the Kabbalah of 9 chambers and some other subjects that I wanted to touch on. And so I thought, let me just kind of crack it open and see where it lands. And it lands on the theory and practice of black magic. So I just figured I would read this couple little sections here while we talk about this process of what we do now that we've come to the truth and we're playing with our toys for real. Prior to that, we're just going through the motions, right? We don't even know what it is we're looking at, what we're saying, what we're doing. But then it dawns on us what we're saying and doing. And when that dawns on you, it begins to work. So let's begin. The Theory and the Practice of Black Magic by Manly P. Hall. Some understanding of the intricate theory and practice of ceremonial magic may be derived from a brief consideration of its underlying premises. First, the visible universe has an invisible counterpart, the higher planes of which are peopled by good and beautiful spirits. The lower planes, dark and foreboding, are the habitation of evil spirits and demons under the leadership of the fallen angel and his 10 princes. We've all heard that story before. Second, by means of the secret process of ceremonial magic, it is possible to contact these invisible creatures and gain their help in some human undertaking. Good spirits willingly lend their assistance to any worthy enterprise. But the evil spirits serve only those who live to pervert and destroy. Kind of like the tower. Die daily. Third, it is possible to make contracts with spirits whereby the magician becomes, for a stipulated time, the master of an elemental being. Sounds like fun. Fourth, true black magic is performed with the aid of a demoniacal spirit who serves the sorcerer for the length of his earthly life, with the understanding that after death the magician shall become the servant of his own demon. For this reason, a black magician will go to inconceivable ends to prolong his physical life, since there is nothing for him beyond the grave. Okay. Doesn't sound like it's so much fun anymore. I don't know. Maybe we should just read this. Let's just read this last one here and see what it says. I don't know. Maybe this will give us some insight. Should we do this or not? I don't know. I'm kind of changing my mind. The most dangerous form of black magic is the scientific perversion of occult powers for the gratification of personal desire. Its less complex and more universal form is human selfishness, for selfishness is the fundamental cause of all worldly evil. A man will barter his eternal soul for temporal power, and down through the ages a mysterious process has been evolved, which actually enables him to make this exchange. In its various branches, the black art includes nearly all forms of ceremonial magic, necromancy, witchcraft, sorcery, and vampirism. Under the same general heading are also included mesmerism and hypnotism, except when used solely for medical purposes, and even then there is an element of risk for all concerned. Ooh, spooky. Alright, so what are they saying? I can lose my soul? Let's do it. Okay, Well, now we're doing this. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. Did that warning cause anybody to think that we're crazy to do this tonight, or are we doing? I'm doing it. So if you don't want to be part and parcel, now's the time. Whoa. Seriously though, like don't take this too seriously. Don't forget, this is playing with toys. Okay, so let's see what we can see. Make some room. I mean, if we're gonna call demons and angels, we need a space for them to show up in. So the first thing that we should do here is to determine what it is that we want to call. And so what we're going to do, rather than dealing with some of this boring stuff, like these are entities that have already been called multiple times by multiple magicians over multiple centuries, we're going to create an entity. We're going to make a demon. Because why not? That sounds awesome. What kind of cheese? Are we talking mozzarella? Or are we talking like cheddar, shredded cheddar? I just love it. You know what somebody turned me on to one time, and I became immediately addicted? Chocolate covered coconut slices, like shaved coconut dipped in chocolate. It's as good as it sounds. So the first thing that we need to do is to determine the personality of this entity that we're going to create. So what do we want it to be like? There needs to be engagement here, so we need at least 1 or 2 people that are interested in doing this work with me right now, so that we can have this thing happen for real. Colby Jack and demon summoning. Now we're talking. Doesn't get any better than that. God made milk, man made cheese. True story. So, I'm wondering. I guess we can use that one. Okay, so let's start with a name. So we're going to do this a couple of different ways tonight. We're going to introduce the Kabbalah of 9 chambers at the same time, because we're going to use it to choose the name of this entity. So the first thing that we need to do, great, Luana. So the first thing that we need to do is to determine a will. I would say the will of this entity should be to wake people up to the truth. We want to wake people up to the truth, right? And so we want a name that relates to truth speaker. All right, which makes sense. Okay, so and so I think actually, how about we use some Latin, right? So how about this one? I don't know if that... Actually, I guess it's spelled correct here, so I'm going to use this. Okay, and what this is the sound of truth. Soneverum. 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 So now that's the word. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to transform it. You know, we're not going to heal it. We're going to transform it. Right? I love Latin. Latin's a great way to name things. Because the idea here is that we're going to be, and this is the beauty of the magic of this work here. That is a mashup of, that's a fake word. That is the combination of the Latin word for sound and the Latin word for truth that we stuck together, that I'm then going to translate into Hebrew characters and then run through a system that changes the letters into a new word. So the new word is so random that there's truth in it. That's the goal here. And so now what we're going to do is use that word as the name of our entity. And then we're going to take that name and we're going to draw a sigil. And that sigil will be the symbol of that entity. And when we draw that symbol, it will be manifest in our physical world. And then from that point forward, we can apply other pieces of knowledge to the sigil that give it more of a direction. So not just the sound of truth, but how about the sound of truth spoken in number, the sound of truth spoken in music and in color. And we can apply one of the elements to it. Do we apply the element of communication? Do we apply the element of emotion? And so forth, right? And so we're going to talk about all that as we go through the process. So the first thing that we're going to do is to do the math on the word. So is everybody good with sonoverum? It's kind of a Latin mashup of the term for sound and the term for truth. So if everyone's cool with that, and someone or everyone, whoever's here, the one or two that are still watching, this freak is like demons on the... What's going on? Anyway, so if you're still here, give me a thumbs up, and then we'll go with sonoverum. Sonoverum. And first, let's take a look at what is the actual math for the term, right? So let's look at that first. So sonoverum is going to be Samic, Vowel, Nun, Yud, Vow, Hey, Resh, Vow, and then we're left with Mem. So 383 is our first number here, right? So let's just take a look at that first. Okay. $383. To stroke, caress. Interesting. Okay. Wow, I'll just highlight that. It's the 76th prime. Cute. 76 trombones led the big parade with 110. No. So 383 means to stroke or caress. And now again, what the word that we're referring to here is the sound of truth. It reduces to a 14, which reduces to a 5, right? So let's just grab 777 in the meantime so that we can do both. Where's my desk? Okay. And so we're going to do 14 because it reduces to 14, right? Which is a 5, but let's do 14 first. A thorn or spine, rising ground, sacrifice, love, beloved, the name of David, to give, bestowal, hand, gold. Now, that's a good number, right? Anyways, but so you get the idea, right? Okay, so then this is the symbol, or this is the name of the sound of truth. So what we're going to do now is to take it to a different level. And we're going to do the permutation, right? And so now what we're going to then do is, let's pop up the text here. And so the first thing we're going to be doing is Let me write that down. SONIBERUM. Okay. Right. And everybody saw how we did that. Okay, we had Samick, Vow, Nun, right? And as we go through that process, we just fill in the blanks here. Yud, Vow, Hey, Resh, Vow, Mem. Okay. All right, so you get the idea here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new word. And that new word is going to be derived from taking those letters and turning them into something else using the idea here of the, actually the 9 chambers, which is going to be here. Okay. And what these 9 chambers are a way to, depending upon the system that you decide, if you're going to do 330 or 300, to code language, and then to, at the same time, to permutate the letters. Okay. And now the way that we're going to go about doing that is very interesting. Okay, so let's just take a look at this here with respect to the system is very interesting. It's one that has been used for a very long time as a means of coding. Let's jump to the GIMP window here. Okay. And so, for instance, you would have what's called foxing, where you would essentially draw 3 pound signs. Pardon my mousing skills. I'm very clean with a pen. And essentially draw the alphabet, like A, B, C, D, E, F, so forth. G, H, I, J, K. Now, how you would write these symbols is, for instance, if I wanted to do the name Abe, I would write that name like this in code. And this is how it would appear. This is ABE, right? Or, now, for the letters that appear in this second section here, they would have a dot, a single dot. Okay? And so if I wanted to write the word no, it would look like this. Okay? And so this is the word no. Right? And now same thing here. You just keep going. P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. And this is a space. Now, and these would have 2 dots. Okay, so if I wanted to write the word sty, it would look like this. And these would each have 2 dots in them. Okay. So you get the idea, right? Very simple system, very basic process, nothing too complicated, right? But now, and the reason that this is called foxing is because the word fox looks like this: F, O, X. So it's the same symbol, just drawn with, you know, so we have the F, the O, and the X. Right? So it's just a term for which cipher you're using. Okay? And that's one of the ciphers that's used to hide information and so forth. Another one is called pound X. And pound X is the same system, but what you do is you use a pound sign and then an X. And then you do another pound sign and an X. And these on the bottom have dots. Okay? And the letters are read in a lightning bolt like that. So anyway, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. This would be the J, K, L, M. Right, so J, K, L, M. Right? N, O, P, so forth. And then you would write them, for instance, you know, like the word no would be N, O. Right. Joy would be okay. You get the idea. And so this is called pound X because it's a pound sign, it's a series of pound signs and an X. Okay. And so these are all the different methods that we can use for determining what symbol system. And now, if you know pound X, it's very easy to read it, and it's not a secret cipher. It's been out for a long time, published. And so the way that we keep it secret is by using a code word. And that code word tells us essentially how to start this. So for instance, we would use a word like Michael, which has 7 letters that don't repeat, C-H-A-E-L. Pardon my mousing. And what we would do then in our pound X is we would start it with that word. So it would be M-I-C-H-A-E-L. And then I would start writing the alphabet, excluding the letters that I've already drawn. So this is not an A because we already have an A. This would be B. There's a C already used, so this would be D, and so forth. And so the order changes based on the keyword. The longer the keyword, the harder it is to decode. All right. And one of the methods that we're going to be speaking about tonight, which is a powerful method for this process, is the Kabbalah of 9 chambers. Okay, and what that refers to is the idea of taking these letters and changing them based on this little box here on the bottom, which you'll notice looks very much like a pound sign. And it is. And so, for instance, the A in the top right corner, or the B in the top middle, or the G in the top left corner, are all just drawn in the way that we would expect. Okay? And the way that we would expect sorry, just give me just a moment. There we go. The way that we would expect that is that we would have our pound sign here. And so if we were to write or attempt to write the word Abba, Abba would look like A, right? And then we would do all of you put it over here. A, B, A, right? That's fine. And then if we were going to go to the second set of letters, we would just simply add a single dot. And so that single dot would be for I, Yud, K, and L, right? And then 2 dots for the Q, the R, and the Shin, and so forth. And so through that process, you could essentially then write a word. And writing that word will give you letters related to the code here. So like this one might have 1 dot, this one might have 2 dots. And if we consider what this word now says, this first letter here if we look at our chart, puts it on the top there, with the 1 dot makes it a yud. And then so that second one has no dots, and that would make it a B. And then the third one, it has 2 dots, and that would make it a Q. So the idea here is just switching it up based on this rule, and what that does is it gives us a new word, okay? And so we're going to do that with this word that we developed here in the stream, and that word that we developed is Sonoverum, and we're going to now apply Sonoverum to the code here and see what we get. So let me put it in the stream here, or in the chat. SONIVERUM. Yep. Okay. And that equals 383. Okay. So now what we're going to do is apply this code, and what we're going to do is use the 1 dot, meaning that if it's an A, it turns into an I. If it's a B, it turns into a K. All right. And so we're just going to use basically multiplying it by 10. And so what we're going to wind up doing is getting 383 is going to turn into 3,830, right? Or however the number will reduce the same and all that neat stuff. However, it's going to be spoken very differently, right? And it's going to have a different definition. So let's go ahead and do that. Missy, how's it going? Thanks for popping in. Yeah, I know I'm late today. I'm sorry. I actually tried to be earlier, but alas, man plans, God laughs. So let's start with S, right? And so the S is going to turn into where is our S? It's going to be in the middle on the bottom there. And so that S is going to turn into a V. Unless we want to go forward with times 10. We could either reduce the number or increase the number. I would say it's more appropriate to increase since we're starting and we're going times 10. So let's stick with that same idea, okay? And so in this case, it's going to become an M. So it's going to be M. The vowel is going to become an S. The nun is going to become a K. Kaf. Not kof, but kaf. That's a 20. The yud is going to become a kof, a Q. Right, the vowel is going to become a samak. Okay, the hay is going to become a nun. The resh is going to become... Now, here we have an interesting question. To double the resh, or to multiply that by 10 would make it 2,000. And so rather, we're going to double it, which would make it 400, which would make it a tet. Okay, so just to be clear, when we're doubling the resh, it becomes a tet. Okay, and so that's going to become a th. And then the vowel is going to become a samak. Okay, and so let's just put the word in the chat here. Okay. So this is the new word. So we have Sonoverum has now become, let's try to pronounce it very quickly. Let's see. So that kof is going to be pronounced as a vowel, so Mesicozentus. I like that. We can separate that too phonetically just to have fun. We can call it Mexico. Mexico Synthetis. So this is how this entity is going to be pronounced. That's how it's pronounced, Mexico Synthetis. But in the meantime, this entity now has a sigil that we're about to draw, because I mean the whole point of what we're trying to do here is to bring the sigil of this entity into reality. Now actually allow this thing to become real and to give it identity. And one of the ways to do that is to actually bring it into physical manifestation. So we're going to draw a sigil based on that. This is just the sigil for the name Michael, as an example. There's I added a little overlay to make it perhaps a bit easier if you're not familiar with the Hebrew. Okay, so we could easily just draw that based on that'll be provided as a link as a little toolkit that I'm putting together. But that said, so then we're going to draw that sigil and we're going to do the numerology. So let's first of all get the numerology out of the way. Let's take a look at what this now includes, like what this now equals. My cat used to purr magic and lull me to sleep like right before you get... Oh, wow. Yep. That cat certainly has the mojo to do that, right? Okay. So, we're going to do Mem. Samk. Kof. San. Nun. Tet. San. Okay. Now, do we see where that number changed? And that changed due to the resh being doubled, right? And so we and now this TH listed as a 400 is under the circumstance of it being a tau. So let's just make sure we got that correct. Because what we're looking to do here is to change the letter Resh. Yeah, and that's going to double to 400. So that's tau, not tet. Okay, so let's just correct that. I write tau as a T. TH for me is tet. T is tau. TZ is tsadi. So I confused myself there and I apologize. So that said, let's just do that over with really quickly. And let's get that right. So one more time. Mem.
Samak, Kaf, Kof, Samak, Nun, Tau, Samak. So now we're at 790, okay, which means 7, right? Because we know that 9 is 0, so we could do the math on that if you want. 16, 1 plus 6 is 7. But so 7. And it's also 790. So let's just, first of all, let's look up 790. And see if we've learned anything interesting. Abortion or miscarriage, or to yield fruit. How interesting is that? Now, just to be clear, okay, so the word we came up with a word. We're going to be calling an entity tonight, and I thought rather than just calling an entity, let's create one. And so the idea is the creation of an entity whose job is to speak the truth. And so we came up with a word which is Sonaverum as its name. And now we're using the Kabbalah of 9 chambers to permutate the name into this new name, which is pronounced Mysicosentitis or Sentitis. Mysicosentitis. And then we're going to draw a sigil of that in order to bring it into physical form. And so basically what we're doing is looking for the intelligence of this being to be the desire to speak the truth, and then we're going to decide how, a method, giving it a vocabulary. Speak it through music, color, sight, sound. And so what we'll do is we'll put it out into the stream here, and it will be present in the room during this process of the rest of the stream, providing the ability to, or the goal of the communication being spoken through that method. So we'll find out what it is once we do the sigil. So that said, we have this new word that means abortion, miscarriage, or to yield fruit, which is interesting because the term that we're looking for here is the voice of truth, the sound of truth. Yielding fruit makes a lot of sense to me, this idea of yielding fruit. So I think it's a good name. I'm going to stick with the name. It makes sense sort of with respect to what we're trying to do here, right? So that said, then now we have to draw the sigil. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to jump into this little tool I threw together here to do that. Okay, and let's just get rid of Michael. Okay, and let's just draw this name. So just to be clear, let me put it in the I have to copy, pardon me. Okay. So to be clear, what we're looking at is this word on the bottom here. Okay, that's the new word that we're trying to draw the sigil for. Okay. Mem. Sam. Kaf. Kof. And then one more Sam. Okay.
And so now let's just add the definition here so that we're all on the same page. And so this is the sound of truth. And this is the bringer of fruit. There you go. Okay, so, alrighty. Cool stuff. So now let's draw this sigil by essentially going to the wheel here and going from, so MSK. You know, I need to be able to see that. So I'm just going to print that screen and paste it in here, pardon me. Okay. Just for me to see. All right, there we go. So first thing we're going to do is find the mem and begin. So we'll start here in the middle. And then we're going to go to S, K, Q, S, N, T. It's looping back on itself. I'm going to stick that in the middle there. Back to the S. Okay, and then we're going to just draw a line. And here we're going to draw a circle indicating where we began. Alright, so there's our sigil. And what this is the symbol of the identity of the bringer of fruit. To yield fruit. Let me correct that. And let's do the other word. There we go. Okay. And so what we're going to do here is just get another layer. And we'll do this one separate. There we go. Okay. All right. So, yeah, pardon me. So let's do... Oh, sorry, I pasted the thing on the wrong. I apologize. I'm using GIMP, and I have no idea how to use it. I've been using Photoshop for like my whole life, and now I'm using GIMP, and it's so different that it's actually debilitating. Like I have no idea how to use it. All right, so I'm trying to just create a separate layer for me to draw on top of. There you go. That's separate from the other sigil there, and we've done that. Okay, so then now we're looking at S. SVN. So S V N Yod Vau He. This is why you use paper. Resh Vau Mem. Resh Vau Mem. Draw a line here. Starting here. Okay. So what we're looking at in these two sigils where are those letters coming from? There we go. Okay, what do we have here are these two sigils. Is this one here represents the new word, and this one here represents the old word. Right? Is everybody clear on how we came about with all that? And so it's the idea now of either creating a sigil that will either contain one or both of those symbols and then drawing it on paper, right? Like bringing it into physical manifestation. So we're just going to grab a little piece of paper. I'll actually use a piece from tonight, why not? And so now, here's what we do. Caressing abortion apparition. Wow. That's beautiful. No, what we're actually doing here, although it's interesting if you notice, the one side was in respect to miscarriage or abortion, i.e. the idea of a growth that was in the process of growing that was not able to complete for whatever reason. And then on the other side of that, you have the opposite energy of bearing fruit, right? Or what was the term? What was the actual term? Yield fruit. Right, okay. So you get the idea. So, but the energy in the symbol that we're referring to is the bearing of fruit. That's the point. And looking at the two opposites at the same time is an interesting exercise. If we apply the two, every two has a third, the algorithm, to the idea of miscarriage and abortion and the idea of yielding fruit, they seem like opposite things, right? But they're kind of two sides of that same coin. And what would be the opposite of those two things? The opposite of something growing and not coming to fruition, and the opposite of something growing and coming to fruition is the opposite of something being constant. Not necessitating growth because it's already in its completed state in the beginning, from the beginning, right? And so that's the idea that we're going for here. It's not the idea of the complementary opposites, but the idea of the one truth that's attempting to be spoken, and that one truth will reflect in this symbol. So let's take a look at the sigil here. And there's two options. We have the sound of truth and the bringer of fruit, and we also have the option of combining them into a different symbol, but can be a bit complex and isn't always pretty. That just looks like a mess, right? And so I think it's better that we define it a little cleaner, and we decide which one we're going to use, or both. And now there's a third method of deciding or designing a sigil, and that's just numerically. So for instance, we have here the number 383. Right, and now so 383 is clearly a series of numbers on this wheel here, right? And now if we go to our chart, we can see that Aleph Bet Gimel 3, and then 8 is Ket, and then back to 3, right? So it's Gimel, Ket, Gimel. And so now we're going to jump over. We're going to take a look at where we are on this wheel, and we're going to go to 383. So let's turn on our alphabet. And so that's G, right? And then we, sorry to switch back and forth here, right? Then we're going to go to, it kind of looks like a hey, but a little different. It's connected to the 8, and then back to the 3, 383. And now the second number is 790. All right, so 790, okay. And so 790 is going to be Zayin to Tet. And 0, typically, I use Aleph for 0 because it's similar to the Fool, which is actually numerically a 0. So what we're going to be doing here is Zayin, Tet, Aleph. All right. So where's the Zayin? Tet, Aleph. And so what we have here is a sigil that is the representation of the two symbols together numerically. Here we have the idea of the symbol as its original name, and here we have the new name. And so each one of these can be put on the talisman or the amulet, or depending upon what you're actually trying to do, right? But so let's just grab our paper and let's get drawing. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Truth. So this first one is the idea, and now here's the point. It doesn't have to be the exact representation angularly. It can be a little, there is creative license here. The point is that it's the embodiment of the appropriate shape. All right. And so we're starting here. And I'll put this one on top because this is the unification. And so we're going to go like that, like that, like that, then down, and then up across all three. All right. So that's our first. The second one that we're going to look at here is the original word. Okay. Now this is slightly different here. We start, I'm going to put that down here in this corner. So up, down, and across. And into the middle, out, and back down. Okay. This one could have crossed over a bit more, but you get the gist. It's there. And the third one the new word. Okay. And I'm going to put that here. Maybe I should put it on the back. No, let's put it on the front here. And so we're going to start there. Okay. One more time. Okay. Then we're going to start considering some of the other symbols that might be relevant here, right? So what we're talking about now is the idea of the sound of truth, bearing fruit, yielding fruit. The intent is for it to yield the fruit of truth. That's the goal here. And so now what we want to do is we want to put some potentially other symbols that are in respect to that, like the idea of speaking, right? And the idea of speaking is the idea of the sword, right? It's an active energy, but it's also an active energy of communication, thought, mind. And so we can express the idea of the sword many different ways. And one of my favorite ways is the idea of two dots connected by a line, right? Another way is the cross. The cross is the sword, right? It's two, but in respect to lines, not dots. And so we could do a cross or a line. And what I think might be nice is a cross indicative of an upside down sword. Okay, so we're just going to put a symbol of an upside down sword. And the whole point of this exercise here is to just give it a little bit more of a goal, right? So we've got a little sword that I drew here on the side, very simple, pointed down. And there's this idea of speaking. And so now one of the symbols I like for speaking is you draw a little square and draw an X in that square, okay? And now this is the state of listening and this is the state of speaking. So what we're going to do is we're essentially going to shade the other areas and leave that one open, implying that this is in a state of speaking. Okay, like there's an outward motion, like a greater than, less than situation. So you get the idea here. So that's just a symbol of speaking, right? And now there's other methods for finding symbolism related to this as well. And again, the thing that we're trying to recognize here is the one truth. And so I'm just going to turn this over, and what we need to do is to kind of come up with our idea of what a good symbol of the one truth is. And so it's a very difficult thing, obviously, to come up with, because as soon as we put a dot on the page, that dot is now a 2. There's the dot and then the page. And so if the idea is the one truth, what we're going to wind up doing is just creating a symbol for the space that it's occupying and leave the inside empty. And so another way to put that is that on the reverse, we're going to put its goal. If its goal is speaking, if its will is to speak, its goal is to be heard. And so we're going to use the same idea in the same direction. I'm just going to flip this over, and in the spot where that sword is coming down, I'm going to draw a cup. Okay, and the whole reason that I'm drawing this cup right now is to symbolize the fact that this experience is taking place on a real level, and that we can embody it once it's together here. Okay, and so we're just going to take this idea of some water coming out of this cup. Okay, and then on the reverse side we have a sword. Okay, and now if you were to see this through light, you would see that the sword and that cup are, it's really bright, people, sorry. The sword and the cup are together. Did everybody see that? Okay, good. And so that's implied, because although we can't see it, that's what's happening, right? Yeah, you're right, Luana, that the point does represent the whole truth. The dichotomy there is that that's what got us all into trouble, because it was the point that gave birth to everything else. Once the point was born, space had to be born for it to be occupied in, to give it a place to live. And when that happened, all this happened. But so you get the idea here. So we have as a sword on one side, pointed down, and we have a cup on the other, receiving that sword symbolically through this, the light passing through. Okay, and then finally we can give it, like a willful intent of the signature of the person that's doing the work. Okay, and so since we don't have an actual specific, if the will is to speak, the goal is to be heard, right? Yeah. Right, but don't forget, it's now, what that means though is that to speak with the intent of being heard is a different kind of listening, as opposed to speaking without the intent of being heard, but just speaking. Okay, which is different than the goal to be heard. This has the goal to be heard. You don't. You are just speaking in every way possible, with no regard for whether you're heard or not. That's what we're all doing. So that said, I'm just going to sign it personally, okay? And that will set the intention. Okay. All right, and so now what we have is the idea of the sound of truth yielding fruit through the act of speaking, and we're here to receive that, okay? And so now we haven't indicated visually, auditory, sensationally, we just said speak, right? So we don't know exactly how it's going to manifest, but we know that this is now an actual thing. Now, I've used this exact technique in a couple of circumstances in my life where real change happened right away, and I mean physical change. Like I created a little one for money. I created a little one for communication that was related to a certain phone call I was about to take place, that I needed a certain event to happen during that call, and it happened, and it was a big deal. Things like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it up. I'm going to go take a quick break, and I'm going to burn it. All right, I'm going to do it outside because my smoke detector will go out if I do it here. Okay, so now I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to take it outside and burn it. And then we're going to, I'll bring the ashes back in and show you the ashes, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I just need a couple of minutes to go ahead and give birth to this entity. And I'll be back in a minute.
Alrighty. So there it is. Let me put it up there, right in the middle. Okay. We consecrate it with our wand. I'm going to draw some symbols. Consecrate it with our sword. We consecrate it with the pentacle of victory. And of course, it is the cup. This is me mixing it with the ashes of my prior selves, recreating every day, transforming every moment, with the sole purpose of hearing and speaking the truth. Pink is the union of red and white, the will and divine mind toward the work. Green is the union of heart and mind. Let the will and the heart unite in mind to create truth, to speak it, to be heard. It is born. It is. The work is done. So mote it be. All right, so there that was. That's it. Okay, and so just to be clear for everybody in the chat here, what we did is we brought into a physical manifestation an actual entity whose goal is to speak the one truth through the voice and to be heard and felt in our hearts. And as this incense lifts, it becomes more and more intelligent. It becomes more mature. It begins to grow in the world and manifest more and more density, more gravity that draws toward it the power to extend that will back out at a perfect combination, a perfect ratio of that. As it enters the world, it draws in that same amount. And so it's a matter of us giving it that continued strength so that we can continue to hear the truth throughout the evening. And tomorrow, we will banish. And we will create a new entity that has a new will. Because that's what we're here to do. To destroy and to transform. So. Fun. Right? So we can do the same thing now. Anybody who'd like, we can do is to apply this same idea to your name. Find the new name by using the Kabbalah of 9 chambers. And then once we have the new name, draw the sigil, and then you'll have a sigil for your name. So whoever wants to participate, we'll do 2 or 3. You just pop your name in. Luana, I know that I think you were interested in that as a part of the process, and so we should do that. Missy, if you're interested, let me know. Emma, let me know. And or whatever words you give me, we'll do it. It doesn't have to be your name. It can be your magical name if you know it. It can be your intent for the evening. Just understand that whatever we create tonight, if it's your name, will be a permanent sigil, which is pretty cool. Right? It's always nice to know how to write your name in angelic. Or demonic. Because we wrote both names, didn't we? We wrote the angelic name and the demonic name. Okay, so, is Luana your full name? Because first, let's just do Luana. Okay, so there's Luana. Now 138, let's look at 138 first. I appreciate it. And thank you for popping in, Emma. I mean that. 138. To be smooth, to lick off, consume, plunder, cut up, share, divide, distribute. Smooth, not hairy, flattering. That's actually a very holy word, smooth. It refers to the idea of the completed work at Keter. To be sharp, pungent, to be sour, to be acidic, salty. Okay. To cover or hide. Ooh, I like that. The coverings. To enclose. The White Mountain of Lebanon. Battleground. To take or lay hold of. To seize or capture. To captivate. Great. These are all very good words. The Comforter. Menachim. Decision of Yah. To shine or be conspicuous. Breathe. That's a great word. All right, it's a great name. Okay, so just in the meantime, that's your name as it stands right now as Luana. Okay, but now and the way I spelled that was Lamed. Yeah, Lamed, Aleph. Oh, sorry, Vowel. Aleph. Nun. Aleph. Okay, and that was 30. 6. 1. Now I just did 100, but it's 50 plus 50. And then 1 for A. And that's 138. Okay. All right. So we have to think about here, how do we want to, what word do we want to choose here for Luana? So, I mean, there's so many, right? I mean, there's the idea of the smoothness, but also the idea of covering up, but there's also the idea of breath. To enclose. It's a toughie. All right, anyway, so let's just do the math, though, on the 9 chambers. Okay, and so what we're looking at here is a different set of letters.
And so we're going to begin with Lamed. Now we're going to multiply by 10. So we're going to go to Shin. Next we're going to go to the Vow, which becomes a Samach. Then we're going to go to Aleph, which turns into a Yud. Nun, Nun. The Nuns turn into Kaf, or Kof, final. No, Kaf. Kof doesn't have a final. Kof has a final. Well, let's take a look at that nun. Where's the Kof? It's off a Yud. That works. That's correct in my mind. All right, this is correct in my mind, so we're going to go with that. Okay, so just to be clear, that's going to be a Q, not a K. But it's a Q final. Anyway, so 500. I'm going to put a little F next to that. That'll make sense in a sec here. That's 2 of those. And then we're doing a Aleph, which turns into a Yud. Okay. Okay, so let's get the calculator up here and let's do that quick math. Where's my... There we go, okay. So, starting with Shin plus Samach, Yud, 2 Kof finals, and another Yud. So 1,380. And there are no known values for 1,380. So we can do 138, which is the same value, obviously. In this particular circumstance, and occasionally the number will be different. It's not always the same number, but very typically it is the same number. Value-wise, what changes are the letters, right? And so let's take a look at that. Because that changes the form of the sigil. And so we're just going to stick with 138 as far as the meanings. And so any of those words that we were looking at would have been relevant, right? Okay. So the idea here is to... spell this next word, so let me just get it into the chat for you. So it's going to be SH. Paste it over there. There's a lot of lag. That took a while to send. Okay, so then let's try to speak it. Let's see what we're looking at here. Shesake.
Chesikoi. It almost sounds like Jessica. Chesikoi. Chesikoi. I guess so. I guess that's how I would pronounce it. Yeah. We can do a lot of the vowels too. Let's play with that. Shayoki is another way to pronounce that. Oh, that's cute. Let's spell it phonetically. Shayoki. Shayoki. Okay. And now, but what we're going to do now is make a sigil out of the new word. Okay. So the new word. There we go. Okay. Is that gonna be that one on the bottom? Okay. So let's jump in here. There we go. Let's do this. Okay, so first things first. Let's do the SH. Here we go. SH. S. Y. Q. I'm going to draw a loop. Q. Good. Okay. And let's do another one for Luana, which is going to be L. Vowel. A. We're going to go to the nun, and then we're just going to repeat again another loop. N, and then we're going to jump back up to the A. Let's just do it here. Well, no, which one's more interesting? I think that's more interesting. Okay, and so now let's just put these two together here so you can see what we're looking at, right? What we have here is okay, so what we have here is the new name and your old name. Interestingly, they look kind of similar, but like upside down. But there's a slight different twist in it. With respect to how it's positioned. And you can decide how you want to position that kind of on your own creative process. That's kind of the fun of this, is that you get to decide which one you want to focus on, which one you want to be the one that you identify with, right? But so those are them. And so just to clarify, let me just, keep these up if you want to take a look at those and how to draw them. Let me just reduce so you can kind of see it over the
flower here. Let me move that over. Okay, so you can get the gist of like how we derive that. And let's move that other one over here as well. There you go, okay. So you've got this first one here. This is your actual name. And then you've got the new name, right? Or did I get that opposite? This is the new name. Yep. But you get the idea here. So then what we can do is all kinds of things with that. Like we can take that and use it in any kind of working that's specifically related to you personally, or we can do that working with wanting to look at the opposite side of you, the you know, the lower side. And so, you know, some of the things that we can learn from this here. Let's just pop up the numerology, just so you've kind of got it there. Okay, there's the, and so you understand where that came from. Let me just shrink this down so you've got it as a like a guide. If you go back to this video, you'll remember where we got this from. Okay. Now that QF means it's Kof, but the final version. So it's 500, okay? And obviously this would be done with a full name, not just a first name and so forth, to have, you know, like a complete symbol. Let's take a look at that. That's going to be right here, and let's put the two of them together. Oh, cool. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. Very neat. Yeah, it's pretty though, and you'll notice too that actually, if it's now this is just a standard that you can decide, but typically you put a circle where you start and you put a line where you end, so that it's clear where you began and when you finished. Right? Did I get those in the right place? I'm not sure if I got those in the right place. I'm not sure. Let's get rid of that. All right, we're starting at the bottom there on the Lamed for Luana L. And so we're ending on the A. Right, okay. There you go. So that line right there determines the ending of the stroke. All right, so then there you go. Now again, you can either take the one, the other, combine them like I did with the, you know, by combining the idea into that one truth before burning it. That whole idea, right? And so, and what else can be done with this process, just to clarify, is that it can be used as a code language. So essentially, you could use the same idea of the 9 chambers, but instead of using it to make a sigil, you use it to send coded information, right? So if I wanted to say hello, you know, you would essentially draw this out, use the 9 chamber on the bottom here. Let me get that back larger so that we can see it. And so, for instance, the word high would be that square in the middle. And so that would be a square with no dot. Okay, and then let's just jump over here. It would be a square with no dot. And then it would be the right symbol with 1 dot representing the yud. So H-I, right? So like high. Okay, so you'll see on the top right there is that I. And so that's how it's spelled originally, and then we would come up with a rule, like for instance, multiply by 10, right? And so the H would become an N, and the I would be a K, and so it would essentially be no. You can pronounce that as no, or knock, or nuke. But the idea is it would be a different term, so it would be written differently. So what we would do then instead, it would be written as. And the second symbol would be taking that yud into a Q. Oh, excuse me. And so this would be the coded version of that based on the rule that we decided. Right. And so the final thing, that the message that we would be sending out that would be visible would be this, but the thing we would actually mean to see is that. Right. And so it was another one of those sort of Masonic ciphers where you could write text down that you needed to pass over a period of distance or time, but needed it to stay secret. That would be one of the methods that was used to ensure that took place, right, and that it stayed secret. But I think that it was a very effective demonstration of how you apply sigil magic to actually personifying an intelligence. Right? And so we'll go ahead and just mix up the ashes. I love a dirty pentacle. You know what a dirty pentacle means? That means you got some work done. It means something happened. A clean pentacle is a boring soul. Oh, really? Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. With respect to the technique or respect to how we go about this stuff. Oh, ladies and gentlemen. Look who it is. What's going on? What are you doing up? It's late. You have school tomorrow. You just want to be cute. So, what we did is we invited the Spirit of Truth to join us this evening, and so that we can hear it. Right? We can hear it many different ways, because we didn't give it a specific direction. We just told it to speak. And so it can speak in words. It can speak in color and sound and light. It can speak in sensations. It can speak in meaning. There's a lot of different ways that we can go about that. And so one of the things that we can do is to give it an opportunity. And the way that we do that is that we go through some random reading and some other methods, right? Some of the things that I thought that would be fun to talk about tonight with respect to sigils and gematria, the idea of black magic. What we did tonight, was that considered black? By some definitions. I put my soul at risk, right? Is it white? What does that mean? Well, white magic means this, and if it's internal, and if it's not related to the physical world, okay, whatever. Black magic, is it selfish or intent? Is the goal to strictly satisfy a bodily need? All these things are really just internal definitions, because ultimately, we're the one that decides the definition of our will. If we're being honest with ourselves, we'll know if the work is black or white. But it's really just shades. There is no black and white here. In this world, everything's a shade. And the idea, like we spoke about yesterday with respect to embodying Lilith, becoming her, is that same concept. And so, recognizing the parts of us that we have integrated or haven't yet, and the benefits of going through that process, and the power that we have access to when we do that, cannot be overstated. And so it just comes down to understanding why we're doing the work. Forget the definition of the shade. Red is red. And so it comes down to your intent that determines that shade. So is the magic that we did tonight black? I don't know. Maybe by some people's definitions. And unfortunately, because of that definition, they won't be able to hear the truth that's being spoken to them through the act. Those of us that are open to hearing that truth will. Because it's always talking. And now we gave it a direction. We gave it an actual identity. And when you give something an identity, it has desire, and it wants that desire to be met. And so that's what's going into the world right now, is the desire to speak the truth and be heard by anybody that's participating in the stream here tonight. And so for the remainder of the stream, until I do the banishing, this intelligence exists right now and is speaking to you right now. And so let's find out what it's saying. There's a couple of books here that are really good for random. Here's one that I haven't actually jumped to for random stuff in a while. It's a book from the 70s called Das Energy, or Das Energie. Quite controversial for the period of time that it came out. Because it was viewed as being like anti-church or these other things, and that's not the truth at all. It just has a different perspective on what the word means. But so I just thought it might be interesting to just sort of crack the book, randomly read a page, and then we'll talk about maybe something from there and gain some insight from that. Considering that we have this entity that we've put out into the world to show us the truth, we might as well listen. Compatibility with December 9th, April 22nd. Yeah, we'll look at that. Let me just read this paragraph, and then we're going to answer that question with respect to what we are about to learn. Security is quicksand. Can it really be anyone's ambition in life to become one half the couple in the life insurance ads? Security? Life insurance? How much are you worth dead? More than you are worth alive? Hurry up and die then. Hurry up and be born again. Cool. So let's take a look at your question, and then we're going to refer to that. Because the truth is always speaking. We just have to know how to listen. April 22nd, December 9th. Let's take a look at the chart real quick, all right? If you look for April 22nd, you'll see it's in that period of time where things are kind of in a transition, right? We're moving into the idea of the energy of Venus and Taurus. But also the deacon of this period of time is in the energy of Mercury, the 5 of disc. Okay, and the person we're looking at is in the energy of December, which is going to be kind of across the chart there from the 5 of disc. And we're looking at the period of time here of December 9th. December 9th is going to be in the middle area there of the 9 of wand energy, toward the top right, near Sagittarius. And that's the moon in Sagittarius compared to Mercury in Taurus. The Mercury and Taurus person has this sort of like intellectual superiority. They feel a bit smarter than the people in the room, so to speak, with respect to this individual. Whereas the idea on the other side is a totally different kind of person. The Nine of Wands is somebody that is sort of been through a lot of stuff and kind of carries themselves in a manner that is authoritative, because they've been banged around emotionally. They're kind of artsy, but maybe a little too angsty. That book is poetry. That's a great book. Well, the 70s gave us permission, Emma. That's, that was a point where the 70s kind of like opened us up. And it was because of Crowley and that whole movement, and how that evolved in the 60s that gave permission in the 70s to explore a lot of this information. So now if you consider this, Emma, with respect to the energies that we're talking about here, the compatibility of these two energies means that the person that's the Taurus has a desire to be heard, whereas the Sagittarius has a desire to be recognized for the things that they do. So if you want to be heard and they want to be recognized, the way that you can ensure compatibility is to speak to that person's heart, the thing that they want to be filled with, which is, hey, I noticed that thing that you did, and I wanted you to know that I recognized it. And you're going to be heard immediately as, oh, this person recognizes me. And then they're now going to be in a state of listening. And whatever you say to them next, they're going to take as truth. Because you already spoke the first truth. You work hard and I noticed. And so the next truth that you speak will be understood. And so let's ask what that truth should be. What is the thing that if you're actually speaking your real heart, your real truth, what would it be saying to this person? So that when you do put them in that state of reception, that they're receiving the right thing. So let's find out what that is. The knights in the Thoth system are the kings. This is the King of Wands. They all represent fire, and the wand also represents fire. So this is the will to will. The will to do and be. And so what this refers to is the fact that you need to communicate to this person that there is a real energy here for you to experience together, meaning that there's something in you that I see that I think the two of us together could really put some steam behind this adventure, right? There's things that we want to explore, there's things that we want to do and see, and there's things that we want to know that we don't know yet. And why not experience those together? Why not discover them together? Because the combination of those two wills can create this new thing. It's almost like adding to the fire, and that fire is the desire to experience. So let's see how that should be applied here and what you're actually trying to communicate. That came up before too. Okay, so this is similar with respect to the sword being communication, but what we have with the princesses is that they all represent the earth. If the king is fire, the princess is earth. These are like the competing sides, the two polar opposites of the elements. The idea of bringing something into physical manifestation and the idea of the fuel that makes that want to happen to begin with. It'd be more accurate to put them this way. But now, if we see how the cards came out, what we have is this person running toward that person with this desire. And we have the other side here, where we have this person that is in a state of like wanting to communicate, but not accepting what they're hearing. So they're putting out something, they're hearing something back, and what they hear, they reject. And then we have the sun, and what the sun really refers to is this idea of like the unattainable brightness. It's not all about joy and happiness. It's more about the fact that joy and happiness is ultimately up to you, because at the end of the day, the sun casts without regard. And so we have to be cautious about what we let in, because if we just rely on the sun, it's going to let in everything, right? And so there's some ideas here. And so let's take a look at one final little twist, which is to take a look at the chart here and look at the actual deacons themselves, right? So we're looking at the 5 of disc compared to the 9 of wand. The 5 of disc compared to the 9 of wands. So let's just find them. There's the 9 of wand. And let's find the 5 of disc. These are the deacons, meaning the intelligence behind the individuals that we're talking about, right? Let's get it right. 5 of disc is the Taurus. The 9 of wand is the... Okay, good. The thing that she's hearing that she doesn't want to hear is the idea that this other person is too dominant, meaning that of a personality. There's an idea that they know what they want it that way, and it seems like that on the surface that there's it's an attractive quality, but at the end of the day, it seems like the thing that you kind of know in your heart that you're not listening to is that it may not work out the best as far as what your actual needs are emotionally, but it might be fun. The problem is that that's not sustainable. What we have here with this individual, though, is this idea of a paranoia of loss. It's the sensation of there's being like the type of personality of somebody who's like super practical because they've been through stuff where they got kind of lied to or cheated on, or they got somebody stole something from them that they trusted, or whatever the case, and so they change their behavior to kind of work around that. And it can either come off as being practical by some, but some other people might see it as like overcompensating to the point that they become at times unapproachable. Like they're so protective that they're missing the joy. And so the thing that you need to speak to this person, and the ultimate question answered is, this particular relationship will not last. Debauch is the word basically of the side effect of acting out of pure bodily desire. It's sort of like drunkenness, eating too much that you know isn't good for you, but you know, not caring about that type of thing. There's a lot of different ways that this can be symbolized, but the idea of debauch is the idea of acting without regard for bodily desire, and the side effect of that. This is what you get. And it's not a pretty image, right? The cups are filled with sludge, and it's kind of sickly. So the idea here of the person on December 9th compared to April 22nd is that the compatibility is a little sketchy, and it looks like that they need to work out some stuff that's related to some loss that they've had to deal with, and you have to kind of work out some stuff with respect to how you feel like you're being perceived by them, because they feel superior. Okay. I hope that was insightful. And let's look at that with respect to what we just read. If I can find what we read. Alright, someone has to rewind and tell me the page it was on. Okay. I'll find it. This is really great. This is my favorite chapter. Page 116. Union for the sake of union is profane. Seeking truth and finding love is holy. You don't just want to be the other side of a couple on a life insurance ad. Because if that's actually what it is, then it's time to die. Hurry up. You're actually worth more dead than alive, because it's true. You're wasting your life with somebody that's not who you actually want. Because you're seeking something other than truth. And when you know that truth, you will find true love, which is the other side of you that wants nothing more than to fill you up. And you're going to want nothing more than to fill them. I'll check that in a sec. And so you get the idea here. Instead, seek truth. And when you do, you will find true love. And when you find that, then it won't matter. You'll be too busy into each other to even think about the fact that this conversation ever happened. But ultimately what happens when you find that truth is that you won't need the other. And since you won't need them, you'll find them. Yep, it was 118. Security is quicksand, right? Oh, the safe person. Right? How many people marry for money? How'd that work out? Can it really be anyone's ambition in life to become one half the couple of a life insurance ad? No. But that's what we settle for. Because we're so compulsed to fill that cup that we'll let anything in. Security, life insurance, how much are you worth dead? More than you're worth alive? Hurry up and die then. Hurry up and be born again. That's just great. And one page back from that. One page back from that. Okay. That's just great. Awesome. Good stuff. Great book, by the way. I got this from a thrift shop. I paid like $2 for it. Thank you, Paul Williams. You goddamn genius. Thank you, Paul Williams. So there you have it. Right? I mean, it's everywhere. The story's everywhere. Once you know it, you see it everywhere. And why do we know this story? Because we lived it. You were born at the beginning of time. You exist right now, living right now at the end of time, watching yourself, waiting for yourself to catch up. And at the same time, we get to write the story in the middle. Why does the tarot work? Why can we flip these pieces of cardboard with pictures and look at our future? Why? Because we're not looking at the future. We're looking at the past. We're remembering. It's just a recollection. We already know the story because we lived it. And so we can see it in the cards. It's easy to pick out once we know the story. We can find it everywhere. It's the story of your creation. It's the story of the creation of the universe. How do we hear that story? Well, we listen. Your soul is always talking, always. What does your soul sound like? Well, right now it sounds like my voice. That's right, you're not the observer. When you're in a state of listening, the next thing you hear is the sound of your voice. The next thing you see is your face. The next thing you touch is your skin. When you're in a state of listening, you are the only thing that can be heard. When you're in a state of speaking, the universe is listening. Who's listening? You are. When you're in a state of speaking, you're listening. When you're in a state of listening, the only thing that can be heard is your voice. So take a moment and listen. Because when you recognize yourself in that thing, you become it. You become it. Take this stone here. This is a piece of amethyst. It's a nice, beautiful, loving energy. It's like a hug in rock form. It's this beautiful energy right above the throat. We go from the green of the heart into the blue of the throat, and then we move up into this beautiful violet. It's just a gorgeous energy, right? Isn't it lovely? It has the raw matrix on it. This is a nice raw piece. This hasn't been shaped. This has been through some stuff. And I've used it for a lot. It knows a lot. Now I want you to recognize something here. What you're looking at is the sound of your voice speaking to you in color. This is what you sound like in color. This is you talking. You're not the one observing. You're the one speaking. Your body is observing. Your eyes are taking in the light. Your brain is processing it. And you're coming up with symbols in your head that we call language to make sense of what you're seeing. But what you're seeing is yourself talking to you in the language of color. And when you look at this and recognize that that's what's happening, when you hear your voice in color, what happens is that you become it. You recognize that you are it already. And now where do we do that? We don't do that in our minds. Our minds are trying to make sense. Our minds are busy putting words and symbols to things that don't actually exist. You know what this is. It's you. So don't hear it in your head. Hear it in your heart. Feel the love of that amethyst. It's a beautiful energy. Let me see if I can get a good color off of that. A flashlight. It might help. See how soft that is? It's a very, very soft amethyst. This is not a deep purple. It's a good way I can get the color in there without washing it out too much. You can almost see the blue tinge in there. But you get the idea. Just a beautiful stone. And now, remember what it is that we're looking at. At some point you decided that you wanted to experience this and you wanted to just kind of be an amethyst for a moment, and this is your opportunity to do that. Just look at it and realize that your soul is always talking, and right now it's talking in the language of light. And so feel that purple in your heart. Just feel it. You don't have to understand the words. And when you do that, you are it. You become it because you already are. So you just get to swap your perspective and see yourself through the eyes of the world. And for right now, this is a small piece of stone. And if you let yourself go there, you can feel yourself being touched. I promise you that I'm touching this stone with love. Self-compassion. Well, the idea of the violet has always meant to me kind of the in-between, the divine will. Because we always think of the chakra system as a line, but it's not a line, is it? It's actually a loop that goes up in octaves. And so what's after purple? Red. right? And in between red and blue, blue being the throat chakra of communication, and red being the next will, the higher will after unifying to create that purple in the center, right? And so that's what I've always envisioned that. And so self-compassion kind of makes sense because it's really your higher self's will attempting to manifest communication through truth. The higher red, the lower blue, unifying in the middle with that, the sight of the purple, right? The eye, the singular, the combined eye. I'm going to peek at my notes and see if there's anything I actually wanted to speak about tonight that I forgot. I wrote a couple of things down. We talked about the astrology and the natal spread, and that was really, that was fun. We made a sigil. We called no, we didn't call. We created an entity and set it forth into the world. Maybe I won't banish it for a little while and see what kind of havoc it can wreak. We talked about Pound X and Foxing, and then we talked about 9 chambers. Okay, so I pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover tonight with respect to that. Wow. He's trying to, or Emma's trying to give us instructions for ayahuasca. Be very very, very careful who you do ayahuasca with. Okay. You know, I had a friend who used to drink Robitussin to get the DXM, you know, or the DMT. You don't need either. You can actually have the DMT experience on your own without ayahuasca. Without the combination of the herbs and all that stuff. And if you want to, one day I can speak about that process. I'd say there's a meditative process that puts you in a state of actually producing it naturally in your brain. Although ayahuasca is quicker, the experience is not quite the same as the organic one. All right. It is for what you use it for, right? But so that said, though, you know, there are ways to elicit that response, the DMT response, naturally in the brain, and it has a little bit to do just to kind of drop the gem. It has to do with sensory deprivation in meditation, but it doesn't require sensory deprivation. It does if you're not trained, and there are ways to train yourself to the meditative state of truth, which essentially means that you understand the goal of the work and what the actual experiential sensation is, so that when you're there you can recognize it in the future. And so when you're in that state, it's a different idea. You don't require sensory deprivation when you're able to point your attention or to annihilate your attention. And so when you find yourself in a state of annihilating attention, is when that process can begin. And part of that process is the unification of brain hemispheres, which begins to activate certain chemical processes that releases DMT naturally. DMT is an important part of our experience because, again, we're taking in data in a way that we have no process or no means of understanding empirically. We do it through symbols and through psychology and these types of things. Well, one of the ways that we experience our world is through visual interpretation, and we do it through a hallucinatory process. We're hallucinating the color. The color exists from a certain degree through the frequencies that are entering our eyes, but what we imagine as red is a lie, right? And so we're always in the process of hallucinating our experience. We're hallucinating the amount of time, the temporal experience as well. We're actually far behind what we think. And all of these things together are a side effect, a product of these chemical processes, right? And so the DMT experience, when elicited through a concoction that's guided with a shaman, can be very intense. Because it's not quite like the LSD state where you're in a state of dreaming while awake. This is a different circumstance. This is kind of the opposite. And so the benefits are pretty intense, but it requires you to be in the right set and setting, and be with an individual that you can trust, and be with understand the goal of the work. It's not fun. It's not how it works. But one day we'll talk about it. One day I'll be happy to actually discuss the DMT experience and how to do it without medication, or the risk of going to a shaman that's really just going to rob you, right? Or give you some kind of street level psychedelic and fool you into thinking that you've gone through this experience, or how to find an appropriate shaman that's doing the right thing, and how to go about that. So those are some things we could talk about. Thank you. I'm just gonna go to sleep here in a couple minutes too. So. Wow. Well, I appreciate that. Remember them then. Yes, and communal barfing and pooping. That's true. Yeah. If 5 people all take it at the same time, it's a purgative. Before you go through the experience of the communication with the spirit of ayahuasca, you lose everything. Comes out of every hole. So, but that said, though, I really like the way you explain things. Well, I appreciate that. That's the goal. Just keep pointing at the truth until you get your thunderclap. It's a little easier individually, but in a group setting like this, kind of like off the cuff, throwing truth out, and so it sinks in a little bit at a time. That's what I'm here to do, and I appreciate that. So that means a lot, because it means that what I'm doing here is working. There is a madness to my method, and you are my target. All right, so let's see then. How do we finish this evening? How do we end the evening? What I was going to do is put a deck to the test. The deck that I had chosen for tonight was Tarot of the Holy Light. I loved it, then I hated it, then I loved it, then I hated it, and now I love it again, and now I'm giving it away. So before I do that, I'm not giving away any decks that don't pass the test. And so I've been taking decks through the test every day to see if they pass. And if they do, they go on to the list of anyone who joins the inner order and goes through the work of going through the story of their creation, will be receiving a free deck that one of my decks that I'm giving away. So this, we'll see if it passes. This is Tarot of the Holy Light. Something tells me it's going to, but I don't know. We'll see. Does it point to the one truth? That's the question, right? And so the system that it's using is similar to the normal tarot system. However, artistically, they went the route of old alchemical kind of treatise, sort of pen and ink art that was then colored very richly in primary colors by the graphic designer that mashed it up together. But the symbol system is a little unique, and the symbols, like the moon is Aquarius in this particular system. The Queen of Wands representative of Aries, and so forth. And you'll see that there's sort of differences in the deck like that. The decadent is listed here, but is ruled by different cards for a specific reason, which actually is sort of appropriate too. They have an appropriate. So let's just give it a shuffle and look through a couple of cards and see what we can see here. Okay, let's start with something like some majors, and then hopefully get through to some other stuff here. So we're going to begin with Ten of Wands. I know this card very well. This is my birth card, my deacon. I guess we see the passage of time. There's the idea of sacrifice. But what's being sacrificed is interesting. A blue and a red snake. Like the wand and the heart. Represents all 3 of the fire signs, right? All the 10s represent all 3 of the signs in that element. So the 10 of Wands represents all the fire signs. Seven of Wands. 7's an interesting number because that's the number of Sephiroth below the abyss. All right. And 10 is the number of physical manifestation. It's the only thing that's actually physical out of the 10s. Everything else hasn't come into fruition yet. Here's the wheel. Pretty typical tarot type stuff, right? We have Scorpio, we have Aquarius, right? We have Taurus and Leo. There's the idea of the wheel turning. The guy on top's going to be on the bottom. The guy on the bottom's going to be on top. And there's other stuff here too, but you get the gist. They have this listed as Virgo. And why might those change? That's why. Because there's an upper and a lower, and they change order based on the divine vortex. And I've used the term of the vortex many times. And so if you see a deck that has some kind of weird symbolism, kind of think to yourself, I wonder why they chose that sign. Why did it change to that from this? And now if we only had a key that helped us to unlock that. If only somebody out there had done the work so that we don't have to. Let me see. I don't know. Maybe somebody out there has done the work to help us to understand this story. I don't know. Key is all here. The key is here. Okay? And I've talked about it many times. How to apply this knowledge to any system. Really? That's very cool. Let me just read that again. Got an email tonight in big black letters. The body of the email is to announce an event called Telling the Truth. Funny coincidence, I just happened to see it come in. I don't even read my flipping emails. Well, that's because we, created an entity whose specific goal in existing is to speak the truth to anyone that was participating in the stream tonight. That's literally the reason that happened. So this is the idea, and those who have participated know what this is referring to. This is the actual instructions for crafting the key to the inner sanctum, and what that does is it unlocks any knowledge. All religions, all philosophies, all sciences, all arts, all books of wisdom written by man and woman and alien. So you get the gist. There are tools out there that allow us to unlock this information in a way that speaks natively to our heart. And why to our heart? Because that's where we receive divine mind. Okay. So, that said, gonna wrap up. And I'm gonna complete the evening by just plugging that I'm available for readings. Including the astrology spread that we talked about tonight. The Celtic cross. The story, which there's a couple of versions of this. The first version is the March of the Quartz, but that's only a third of the reading. Then we have the Rise of the Proletary, and then the final working, and that spread's pretty intense. It's 3 different sessions. It's about 3 or 4 hours, and it gets to the real heart of who you are and what direction you're moving in from the perspective of your higher self. Right? And this is the one that we talked about tonight, this particular spread, by taking a chart, running your chart, running the system that I discussed. This is a spread that I developed over the years. This is not something you're going to learn or read in a book. It's very unique. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there. And if anyone found any value in anything I talked about tonight, please feel free to like the video. And it's very important if you love me and you love what I'm doing, please comment. It makes a big difference in getting more people out there to join the conversation here. Okay. And anyway, that said, I'm available on email, direct. You can get me on. I'm actually not doing TikTok anymore, and so the best route would just be to either send me an email, or you can text message at that number. I do answer my text messages. And if you'd like to book a reading, there's a link in the description. So thank you so much to everybody who joined tonight. And if you have any ideas about anything else you'd like to speak about, let me know. All right, somebody mentioned a couple days ago Lilith, and we talked about it. And we can continue to do that same idea. And if it's a subject that I'm not qualified to speak to, then I'll find somebody who is, and we'll get them on, and we'll speak to the subject directly. All right, so thanks so much, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great night. None of this ever happened.